Why do you think it's lost on the Israelis, the irony about having escaped to, concentration camps in Europe, and how they don't see how, just 3 years later when they declare the state of Israel, how they began, they were doing ethnic cleansing on Palestinian villages, even in 1948, that's 3 years after they're escaping from Europe. And they can't see the irony that they became, what's your impression as Palestinians?
I think that's a good question. That's a good question to pose to them.
Yeah.
I think it's a very good question. I think the issue of dispossessing people, the issue of putting people in big concentration camps like Gaza, even building walls around towns and villages and preventing people access, giving us ID cards that have an indication of our religion on them, like, they used to wear bands, right? Preventing us from full economic development, squeezing our towns and villages so that, that there is not to cause more hardship and to squeeze economically, politically, and socially in every way possible, preventing Palestinian marriages. As I said, there are 22,000 couples that are in Palestine illegal, are considered illegal. This is actually, you should ask this question yourself. You should actually ask this question.
But certainly you've thought about that. You have to have thought about how they could turn into the role of the oppressor like that.
Well, if I may, just one thing is that Palestinians had nothing to do with the Holocaust.
No.
And we had nothing to do with with the pogroms of the Russians in Europe. And we certainly would sympathize with the suffering of any people who would face such discrimination and such horrific acts. But, and actually, we have a history of accepting people who have suffered under these conditions. So, for example, the Armenians who experienced the Turkish genocide, which Israel refuses to recognize, by the way, in which 1 million Armenians were killed by the Turks, by the Ottoman Turks. Many Armenians ran away from that genocide that took place in their country.
Are Armenians from Iran?
No, they have their own
Armenia.
country. They are Armenian.
Okay.
Many of them were welcomed in Palestine in that period. Actually, not only Palestine, but in Lebanon, in Syria, in Jordan, all over the Middle East. They ran away from this massacre, this huge genocide that was taking place. They were welcomed. The difference between that welcome and what happened to the Jews, the Zionists who came to Palestine, is they came with aggressive intent. The Armenians came to get away from the murder. The Zionists came with an ideology which was to empty the land of its indigenous inhabitants so as to create an exclusive, and that's the key word, exclusive Jewish state in Palestine. And so that meant there was a program of genocide, of ethnic cleansing. So how could we welcome that? How could you welcome that if it happened here? Yeah. Right.
But it's now it's becoming clearer that the leadership of the Zionist movement were actually making deal with Hitler on trying to do, having the Holocaust to take place. On one side. The other side, they were somehow brainwashing, these people who are being attacked. So, because how else can you explain it? I don't know how to explain it. They have to be brainwashed somehow. Because if you are subjected to the worst possible attack on you, Holocaust,
Right.
how could you commit the same thing on other people? That very close of a time period. I don't know. They must have been brainwashed. How else can you do it?
Well, this is kind of in response to that. I've asked myself that same question, and the author that I feel like explains the Jewish perspective the most articulately is a guy named Norman Finkelstein, and he has written numerous books about American Jewry and how the Jewish community in America has received what's going on there, and same with the Israeli perspective. And he's written, and I would recommend you checking out both those books. One's called Beyond Chutzpah, and the other that I've read is called The Holocaust Industry. And he talks a lot about the disappearing, the murder, and the silencing of a lot of Jewish Holocaust refugees that saw that exact irony and stood up against it. And many Holocaust testimonials have been destroyed because it didn't match up with the Zionist agenda. And his parents, in fact, were Holocaust survivors. And so it's obviously, I can't summarize, his whole thesis to you, but he's, a master's in the history of Zionism at Princeton, and really a Jewish American whose parents suffered through the Holocaust, and I think really explores those ideas of how the Jewish community has been able to do exactly what they're doing, and so it's fascinating and fucked up.
Norman Finkelstein. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming.
I think we'll, are there any other comments or any other questions? If not, thank you all for coming.
Thank
and those
you.
who came.
Appreciate it. Thanks.